Today, we're going to make sourdough English muffins with wheat. Our ingredients are 1 cup of fed starter, 2 cups of lukewarm milk, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1½ cups of whole wheat flour, and 2½ cups of white flour. The evening before you want to make your muffins, you're going to get your supplies ready. Make sure that you have warmed up the milk. You don't want it hot, but you want it just slightly warmed. So I stuck mine in the microwave for about 1 minute just to take the chill off of it. As you can see, my starter is light and fluffy and airy, and it is ready to go. It has more than doubled in size since its last feeding. It's been sitting out on my counter for about 4 hours since it was fed, and it's ready to start this project. So I eyeballed about 1 cup of starter into my bowl. And from this point, we're going to add the warmed milk. After your milk is added, you're going to want to include your sugar at this point. So start feeding the yeast growth that you want to have happen. And you're going to stir this together to dissolve everything so that the flours can be incorporated correctly. We're going to start by adding our 1½ cups of whole wheat flour. For this recipe, I used white whole wheat flour that I freshly ground, but any kind of wheat flour will work. And after you get that incorporated, you're going to move on to 2½ cups of white flour. And as you notice, I'm just stirring gently here. This isn't like a regular bread recipe. You aren't going to do any kneading. You're really just trying to incorporate the majority of the flour into the liquid, where you're going to let this sit out on the counter overnight. So after I get all of the white flour incorporated, it'll be time to cover it up and let it sit until the morning when I'm ready to finish the baking process. At this point, you have everything incorporated. You're ready to put the lid on this so that it can set on the counter overnight for anywhere from 8 to 16 hours until you're ready to bake the next day. In the morning, you can see that it's gotten nice and fluffy. In my bowl there, I have 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 2 teaspoons of salt. You're also going to need about 1 more cup of flour. You might not use that entire cup, but you're going to have it so that this is a very sticky dough, that you keep it from sticking to your countertop. So I'm putting some of the salt and baking soda mixture down in with my flour. I'm going to turn my dough out onto this mixture, and I'm going to keep incorporating by sprinkling the baking soda salt mixture so that it gets completely mixed throughout. You are going to be kneading the dough at this point in time, just very gently. It's not going to take much time at all to bring it together so that it's ready to be formed into English muffins. So I'm spreading that dough out. I'm sprinkling some of the salt and baking soda, adding flour as needed, folding it over, and when I notice that it is too sticky, I'm going to add a little bit of flour at a time. Less is more here. We want to add as little flour to this as we can. We do want kind of a wet, sticky mixture when it's all done and over with. We're going to be putting these onto trays once we cut them out that have been sprinkled with cornmeal. So after you cut out your English muffins, you're going to let them set on a tray for about 2 hours to rise. Now, I don't have English muffin cutouts, so I used an inverted cup that I just held upside down and put it on top of the dough and cut it out. And I did that repeatedly, and then when I ran out of room, I gathered my dough back together, got it back out to about a half an inch thick, repeated the process, and in the end I end up with about 1 dozen English muffins. So I'm just going to keep adding my salt and baking soda mixture and a little bit of flour at a time until I get everything completely incorporated and I can touch the dough without it sticking to my hands too much. At that point, it's ready to roll them out and make those English muffins. So this is what my English muffins look like after I have cut them out and laid them on my tray with the cornmeal. I poured a little bit of cornmeal on top so they kind of get that English muffin feel that you get when you buy the store-bought ones. And then it's time to cook them in a cast iron skillet on medium heat. So if you don't have a cast iron skillet, you can just use a regular skillet. Just make sure that you have a lid to be used, and if you don't have a lid, you can use a piece of tin foil that you lay over top. That helps to keep some of the moisture in, and you're going to cook these about 2 minutes on each side until you see that they have browned evenly. I use a temperature gauge and make sure that they reach about 180 degrees in the center, just to make sure that I'm cooking them the whole way through. As you can see, these turned out lovely, light, and fluffy, and they toast up beautifully. Now, while cooking with sourdough, you can't always make things 100% whole wheat, but these turned out great.